آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشروا بمغفرة وأجر قريب إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون ومن يعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا يوقظون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسأله أجرا وهم مهتدون وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا قالوا به يستهزئون
ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا مهدرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة وتأخذهم وهم يخصمون ولا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه شعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينظر من كان حيا ويهك القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخزالها كل شيء وزللها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي قلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي عزاله كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحتك الإثم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤالا خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد للذنوب غافرا ولا لقبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاض من البلاء يقلته وكم من إسار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي آمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني النفي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفزعني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في قلباتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أهترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسقطه على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد التقصير وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مبزا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك أزري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل أزري وارحم شدة زري وفكني من شد وساقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لاتباع كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. تراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من توى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تباعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من عافيته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه قرت لعظمتك ساجدة وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادها وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر هوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طاية وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك أنت يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم صافيا قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها ألا أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكسوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته. فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وحاز ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولم منها زج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته عملته للبلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فحبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وحبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأزجن عليك بين أهلها زجيج العاملين ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولا أنادينك إن كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاقت عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج عليك زجيج معمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تولمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يورقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم زافه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبع لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تقلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجلت ثناؤك قلت مبتدا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستعون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا لي مع جواره وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظ من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بزري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العزيمة جوانه وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرى إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسري عليك في البارزين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن قادني فقد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أسرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من عدائي يا سري الرضا يا سري الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من راس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البقاء يا سابق النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Mu'minin Fajr Jamaat Namaz for both ladies and gents on Friday 1st of March, Saturday 2nd of March, Sunday 3rd of March will be held at 6 a.m. Sunday 3rd of March, Majlis at Qabristan for both ladies and gents at 1 p.m. Mu'minin, tonight I just need to brief you regarding one of our madrasa students who is standing for the Peterborough Youth MP elections. We are honored that Sister Shanzia, I forgive if I pronounce the name wrongly, Zahra, is standing this position at our Husaini Islamic Center. Those youths who are aged between 11 years to 18 years of age and are a UK citizen and a full-time student are eligible to vote. Voting for boys will take place in the kitchen corridor, and also voting for the ladies, girls, will be in the kitchen corridor. Please encourage Sister Shanzia to get this position and represent our community at a larger scale. Mu'minin, tonight's Majlis announcements. Majlis for the Saleh Sawaf of Marhum Alhaj Ghulam Ali Bhai Lalji Rauji, Marhum Lalji Bhai Rauji, Marhuma Sikina Bhai Lalji Rauji, Marhuma Khairun Bhai Khan and Kul Marhumins. Majlis by Brother Alhaj Shahzad and Alhaj Anis Mawani for the Saleh Sawab of Marhum Alhaj Asghar Ali Bhai Mawani, Marhuma Hajiani Khatija Bhai Mawani, Marhumins of Mawani family and Kul Marhumins. Majlis by Bande Khuda for the Saleh Sawab of Bande Khuda's Marhumin and Kul Marhumins. You are humbly requested to recite Surah Fatiha for Kul Marhumins. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. Mu'minin, we are very honored for Layl Jummah Majlis for tonight. We have Brother Mohammed Ali Muraj to do today's lecture. Please let's all welcome him with a loud Nare Salawat.
صل على أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. لقد جاءت رسول ربنا بالحق. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وبآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. وصل على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والصبر السجادية وآثار الباقرية ومؤاثر الصادقية وعلوم الكاظمية وحجج رضوية وجود التقوية والنقاوة النقوية والهيبة الأسكرية والغيبة الإلهية والقائمة بالحق. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم ومحكم كتاب المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بقية الله خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. When Nabiullah Adam alayhi salam was brought down to the earth, he came with the message of the one true Lord. And along with that message of the one true Lord, he brought with him the basharat, the glad tidings of the coming of Rasulullah. When Nuh alayhi salam saved his people and saved his nation from the floods, again he brought the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he brought the glad tidings of the coming of Rasulullah. Ibrahim alayhi salam, whilst propagating the message of the one true Lord, he too would bring down the glad tidings of the coming of Rasulullah. Musa alayhi salam, when he saved his people, the Banu Israel, from the wrath of Fir'aun, he again would give his people the glad tidings of the coming of Rasulullah. Isa alayhi salam, before going on a prolonged occultation, before ascending towards the heavens, he too would give the glad tidings of Rasulullah. Every single prophet that ever came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bringing down his divine message, along with his divine message, he would also give the glad tidings, the basharat of the coming of the seal of the messengers, Khatim al-Nabiyyin, the coming of Rasulullah. Prophets upon prophets gave the glad tidings of the coming of Rasulullah. Nations upon nations, communities upon communities would receive the glad tidings of Rasulullah. The entire world, no, the entire universe was awaiting for the coming of Rasulullah. And when Rasulullah came on, along with the message of the one true Lord, he would give the basharat, the glad tidings of the coming of the Mahdi. And he would say that the Mahdi is to be from my progeny. His name will be my name. His kunniyat will be my kunniyat. And his resemblance to his character and to the appearance will resemble mine to the most. And so, when we speak about the Imam of our time, the Imam of our time is not only the 12th prince of wilayat, but with his birth, with his rise to imamat, and with his zuhur, every single message that had ever come down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his wali, through his wasi, through his rasul and nabi, will come to culmination and be manifested in the way Allah intends it to be manifested. What do I mean? Every nabi that had come down, part of his message was to also establish peace, establish justice, establish haqq, and eradicate any traces of batil from this earth. Although they were able to meet their objectives in their own ways, when with the reappearance, with the zuhur of the Mahdi, that mission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will indeed come into culmination and will indeed come into manifestation. And therefore, with the promised Mahdi, where every single Imam, whether Nabi, where Rasulullah himself would give the glad tidings of his nation, that means that surely the coming of the Mahdi is no doubt within our books. But it's something that we must need to ponder upon. And when you look at the personality of the Imam of our time, when you look into the history, and when we look into the Mahdaviyyat and the philosophy of this belief of the Mahdaviyyat, we understand that there are some pertinent questions that one may ask. For example, how old is the Mahdi? For example, the Imam of our time is 1,190 years at this age. And the question that might come is the Imam really alive? And we ask in our faith, can any individual be alive for this long? Or for example, one may ask, what were the situations about his ghaibat-e-sughra? What are the signs of his reappearance? But if I was to ask a question that perhaps we may be able to relate to, and is one of the most pertinent questions which may engulf any and all questions that we may have. And that question is, are we ready for the Imam? Or rather, if I was to reword it, am I ready for the coming of the Mahdi? Allow me to give and introduce the topic with a very beautiful story. Now, the story is narrated by Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani. Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani is a scholar that got extremely famous because of his movement against the Akhbari movement. And before Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani rose to fame, he used to be an imam, he used to be a Jamaat Namaz leader for a very small mosque in the land of Karbala. And as part of tradition, as part of habit, every Maghrib Isha Namaz, after that Namaz, he would propagate to his audience by sharing a small hadith or giving a tafsir of a short ayat. And this would follow in, day out. Now it so happens that one day, Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani, he narrates a verse of the Holy Quran or an ayat, and as part of his explanation, he says that, you know what? We are not ready for the coming of the Mahdi. In fact, I am glad that the Imam is not coming right now, because if he was to come, you and I would not be able to support him in the way that we're able to support him. We are not ready for him, period. Now, as you can imagine, when Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani said those words, the entire Jamaat, the entire audience erupted. They're saying, what do you mean we are not ready for the Imam? Every day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, after every namaz, we recite the tasbih of the Imam. Allahumma ajil li waliyyika al-faraj. Allahumma ajil li waliyyika al-faraj. Every time we want the Imam to come, what do you mean we're not ready for you, for the Imam? Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani clarifies and he says, look, when the Imam comes, he will require a lot of sacrifice from us. We really ought to be prepared for him, and we need to prepare the grounds for him before he comes. The people would not have it any other way, and they kicked the Ayatollah out of the mosque, saying, what sort of man are you? We cannot believe that we've been reciting our namaz jama'at behind you for many years. How can you say that we're not ready for the Mahdi? Leave this mosque and take your belongings with you. Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani, he returns back home thinking to himself, what kind of worms have I just opened? Anyway, it was late at night, he goes to sleep. 2-3 o'clock in the night, at around midnight, he hears the knock and he realizes it's the caretaker. So he opens the door, he sees the caretaker in front of him, and at once the caretaker spits at his face, picks up his musalla, throws it towards him, and saying, never step foot in our mosque. We cannot believe what sort of a najis individual you are. We're now cleaning the mosque thoroughly, and never step foot back in the mosque. Ayatollah Wahid goes back to bed thinking, what have I just said that these people weren't ready to hear? Anyway, he goes back to sleep. Again, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, he hears the knock from the same caretaker, he can hear his voice. And this time Ayatollah is thinking to himself, just a few hours ago, I just got spat on, I just got the musalla thrown at my chest. Surely he's here to hit me, if not, do anything worse. So Ayatollah, he narrates, he opens the door and stands behind the door. At this time, this caretaker comes and drops at his feet. Ayatollah thinks to himself, what a turn of events, what's happened? He makes him stand up and he says, what's happened in the few hours? He says, I did all of that. I went back to the mosque and I washed this mosque really well. And of course I was tired. I went back home and I fell asleep immediately. And in my sleep, I was shown a vision. And in that dream, I saw that the announcement's being made that the Imam is here and he is at the haram of Imam Husaini alayhi salam and taking allegiance. And given that we're in Karbala, I got my horse and I galloped as fast as I could to the haram of Imam Husaini alayhi salam. When I got there, I saw a long queue people waiting to give their allegiance, bay'at to the Imam of our time. So I waited, I finally got to the Imam of my time and I said, Salamun alaikum, wa alaikum salam. The Imam says, oh man, what are you here for? I'm here to give you my bay'at. He's like, how did you come? He says, I came with my horse. He says, where did you buy this horse from? He says, I bought this horse from so-and-so person and I paid him this much amount of money. The Imam says, this horse that you have is not valid. What do I mean? That the person that you had purchased the horse from, he's in fact stolen it from so-and-so person. So go give this horse back to its rightful owner. So the man says, Imam, it's not my fault that I bought it. I paid good money for it. The Imam says, I know it's not your fault. If it would have been your fault, I wouldn't even have allowed you to come in this gathering. But go back and return this horse to its rightful owner. He says, fine, labbaik ya Imam, whatever you say. So he goes back, does whatever he needs to, comes back, there's a long queue. Again, ya Imam, I'm ready to give my bay'at. He says, you ready? He says, yes, I am. He says, fine, What's your address? Where do you live? He says, I live in so-and-so street, so-and-so house, so-and-so flat number. He says, you know, your forefathers had got this house in an illegitimate manner. This house doesn't belong to you. Your forefathers had usurped it in a wrongful way. Or according to another version of the same story, Imam says, I want your house to stage my uprising, so give it to him in my way. So the person says, now you want my house? Fine, labbaik ya Imam, take my house, this is for you. And then he says, what do you eat? The crops that you have, there's no zakat in them. The clothes that you're wearing, there's no khums in them. And one condition after the other. After a while, the Imam sets him another condition, and he thinks to himself, and he says to the Imam, are you here to make my life easy, or are you here to make my life hard? Forget being an Imam, I don't even believe you're a Mahdi. And as soon as he says that out of suddenly, he wakes up, and he thinks to himself that surely we're not ready. Not only do we need to prepare our grounds, but we need to train ourselves and live our lives in such a way that we're extremely careful where we get our money from, that our livelihood is halal, and so on and so forth. And when the Imam comes, he's here to, of course, establish divine justice. And no doubt that's going to be difficult. And so from this story, a very pertinent question comes to the forefront of our minds. Am I truly ready for the Imam of my time? And this question, we can see examples of such question in the lives of all of our Imams before that. For example, there's a very famous story of Sahl Khurasani, who comes from Khurasan in the presence of Imam Ja'far Sadiq saying, Ya Imam, why are you not staging an uprising? There's 1,000 people, I can give you their names, verify, they're ready to sacrifice their lives for you. Why don't you stage an uprising? The Imam says, look, don't worry about the uprising, let me worry about that. Let's just have a chat. The Imam, Sahl Khurasan, adamant, Imam, I'm telling you, there's 1,000 people ready to unsheath their swords. The Imam says, really? Can you vouch for that? He says, yeah, I'm telling you, 1,000 people. He says, fine, there's a tandoor over there, there's an oven. Why don't you take a seat for a second? Sahl Khurasani says, Imam, I apologize, I didn't mean to be rude. I just meant to say that, look, there are people ready for you. The Imam says, no, really, I'd like you to go and sit inside the oven. I think many of us have heard the story before. So the person excuses himself. At that point, Harun al-Makki comes. Salamun alaikum wa alaikum salam. He asks him, Harun, go sit inside the oven. Without batting an eyelid, he goes inside, sits inside the oven. And then the Imam looks at Sahl Khurasani. So, by the way, how are the people in Khurasan? How was your journey? Trying to make small talk with him. All the time, Sahl Khurasani is thinking about Harun. The Imam says, don't worry, go, check it out. And Harun was completely fine. And then the Imam says, oh, Sahl Khurasani, tell me, how many of such individuals like Harun al-Makki are ready to give me their lives in Khurasan? Sahl Khurasani says, not even one. So the Imam says, then know that we know better than you when we should stage an uprising and when we should be seated in wherever we are. Or for example, time and time again, if I was to oversimplify the events that transpired just before the Battle of Karbala, according to the narrations, we have what? 12,000 letters stamped by the Kufans to Imam al-Husayn Aba Abdullah saying, Ya Imam, al-Ajal, labay, come. When Muslim bin Aqil came to Kufa, he was met with an overwhelming response. Right? All of them ready for you. And what happens in the land of Karbala? Many of the people who had written those letters, stamped those letters, ended up being captains, commanders and lieutenants at the army of Umar bin Saad. Of course, I've oversimplified this in the fact that when Ubaidullah bin Ziyad came, he imprisoned thousands of followers, many more thousands joined the ranks of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, or a few people even managed to go into Karbala like Habib bin Madahir al-Asadi. And I have oversimplified this, but every time, every Imam, everyone is saying, Mawla, we're ready for you, labbaik ya Imam. And so the question I must ask myself is, am I like one of those people, or am I truly ready for my Imam? And if I'm truly ready for my Imam, then how am I making my life conducive for the reappearance of the Imam of my time? And how am I leading my life in a way that is actually preparing the grounds for the Imam of my time? And how am I waiting? And not just the wait of a lethargic, lazy wait. How am I performing an act of active intidar? For example, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in his famous tradition has said what? أفضل عبادتي أمتي انتظار الفرج. That the best of worship for my nation is to await the farj. And the farj in this context for ourselves is the coming of the Mahdi. Or for example, the tradition from Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, that it is obligatory for the Shias to wait for the Imam in his occultation and to obey him in his reappearance. Or for example, if I was to give you an example that many of us may have already heard of, Dua Ahad, beautiful dua. One of the lines in this dua, and because it's a Thursday night, I would like to touch upon some of the duas of the Imam that are associated with the Imam towards the end of our discussion. But just going through it on a cursory basis. Dua Ahad, we all know about the dua. What is the line that we say in Dua Ahad? إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. What do we say? They, the polytheists, those that don't really believe in you, they think of your coming as very far away. That is going to happen in the next century, in the next millennial, or a few generations later. Whereas we, as your followers, those that are actively waiting for you, think of your coming as very near. So what happens is, if I'm thinking that the coming of the Mahdi is a century later, maybe in my next lifetime, or my kid's lifetime, or the generations after, then our waiting is of course going to reflect that. We're going to be laid back in our home saying, oh Allah Jal, through one hand, but through our minds not really focusing on that active intidar that we're meant to be performing. Whereas if we think that the Imam is going to appear this month, or this year, or maybe in the next 2, 3, 5 years, then clearly our waiting is going to be that of an active intidar rather than a lethargic intidar. And so for the remaining part of the discussion, I'd like to touch upon three main items. One of the first item is the prerequisites of how can we inculcate this idea of waiting for the Imam. The next one is to understand how am I able to develop a practical relationship with the Imam of my time. And finally, through this practical relationship, what du'as, given that it's a Thursday night, what du'as, maybe one or two of them, that I can recite on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis that can build that relationship, which really proves to the Imam that I am genuinely waiting for you actively. You see, one of the first conditions or one of the first stages for us to claim as we are performing this act of active intidar is to, the first stage is called, for example, intidar aqaidi, in the sense that we can't even do any other action if we haven't got our faith solidified. Like I mentioned, the Imam of our time, there is a few core parts of the belief. For example, that the Imam is indeed alive. Have I got the firm conviction that yes, God never leaves this earth without a guide? Have I really believed that the Imam can indeed live right now 1,190 years? Is this something like even possible? Or for example, the concept of Mahdaviyat. And if I'm able to make my ma'arifah about the Imam stronger, if I'm able to find out more about his life, more about his birth, and really study his signs of reappearance, and really study the life of the Imam, and vice versa of his representatives in his Ghaibat al-Kubra, Ghaibat al-Zughra, and so on and so forth, that first stage is to really just prepare the grounds in my mind and in my heart. For example, a very, very famous tradition, not only recorded in our books of the Ahl al-Tashayyu, but also in the books of the Ahl al-Sunnah, of a tradition by the Rasulullah that again everyone here probably knows already. Man mata walam ya'rif imam zamanihi mata mitatan jahiliya, that anyone who dies without knowing, having the ma'rifah of the Imam of his time, dies a death of an ignorant pre-Islamic era. The Rasulullah here doesn't say whoever attains the knowledge of the Imam of his time or the ilm of the Imam of his time. He says ma'rifah. What is the difference between ma'rifah and knowledge? Knowledge is simply getting rid of ignorance, knowing the facts and figures and the kind of facts about the Imam of our time. Ma'rifah is a step further. That ma'rifah is that knowledge of the Imam that actually influences our behavior, that actually changes our behavior. So the first stage of this intidhar is to first really solidify our understanding of the Imam of our time. Is he alive? How can he be alive? And to really think of challenges that may be posed against him and to get that sorted within our own hearts. We don't even have to take it outside. First stage is just to think about it ourselves. On the second stage, after we're comfortable that yes, now I'm comfortable that I really have some level of the ma'rifah of the Imam of my time. The second one is to really understand that his coming is near. Like I said, for example, Dua Ahad, if we're thinking that he's going to be very far away, then our wait's going to be quite lethargic. But if we truly believe that his coming is near, we are going to be prepared for the Imam of our time. We're going to be vigilant. For example, Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi, a prominent scholar that was assassinated a couple of years ago on his way to Jamaat Namaz, he is also the scholar that authored the great book Gunahane Kabira. Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi, a huge scholar. Every Thursday night in Iran, I believe Isfahan or Shiraz, again after his kind of namaz jamaat, whatever, he would have discussion circles with whoever attends the namaz. And as one of the questions that a person from the discussion circle asked was, Ayatollah, answer me this question. What is the difference between the 313 and us? They believe in Amir al-Mu'mineen, we believe in Amir al-Mu'mineen. They love the Mahdi, we love the Mahdi. They are Shi'as, we are Shi'as. What's the difference between them and us? Why are they so special? Why are they compared to the Miqdars and the Abu Dhars and the Qambars of their time? What's so special about the 313? And this is what I mean when we say we have to really be prepared and talk about the Imam of our time. And Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi responds to that youth and says, you know what, this is the exact same question that I had a couple of decades before. When I was a student in the seminaries in Najaf, I had the same question saying, what's the difference between them and us? Why is the Imam not here yet? We're trying, like, surely there are 313 people ready in this world. And once their ashab is ready, like, why are we prolonging the coming of the Mahdi? So after his Hawza classes, they would have something known as Mubahitha, discussions and debates and dialogue with fellow students. And one of the conversations that they would have is what? About the Imam of our time. And this is one thing that we need to understand from the moral of the story is that they made the conversation about Imam al-Mahdi something that's very normal. Like after you finish your madrasa, after you finish your classes, here, by the way, I have this question about the Imam of our time. And so it makes it so normal that the Imam is indeed present within our life. It's just we're unable to see him. Anyway, they asked this question, and so they would go to the scholars one after the other. They'd go to the mujtahideens of the time, and they would get some responses. But they weren't quite satisfied with the responses. And so, as part of their group, they said, you know what? There is a specific a'mal that if one person was to perform this a'mal, it's a quite lengthy a'mal, then the Imam would grace us with his presence. And so they said, look, let's find one person, the most muttaqi or the most kind of pious individual within the city. And they found one person and they said, look, we've got this question and we'd like you to go to the Imam, perform this a'mal and ask this question to the Imam of our time. And he says, look, I'm happy to do this, but give me some time to prepare myself mentally in my heart and we'll start this amal in the next few days. He's like, fine. The amal, for example, 3 days, you fast in the daytime, you worship in the nighttime and so on and so forth. Anyway, now everyone gathers around his house. The first day goes, second day goes, third day. Everyone's thinking that if anything is going to happen, this is the night. And 10 minutes before Fajr, they see something happening and they realize something's happened. And so they wait for the Fajr to come and go, and then they ask him, did you get the audience with the Imam of our time? He says, look, I haven't got the audience from the Imam, but I've got the message on why we're not ready for the Imam of our time and what we need to be doing. He says, very well, tell us about it. He says that, look, this was the third night rather, I was really tired from the lengthy a'mals that I was performing previously, and as part of my tiredness, I dozed off, I slept. And again in my vision, I found myself in the middle of the ocean, in a ship, in a boat, and in the middle of an extremely heavy storm. And as part of that storm, it damaged my ship, and somehow or the other, my shipwrecked boat got to the island. It was an island that I hadn't really seen on the map, so it was quite new for me. And it so happened that I happened to be the first one coming out of that boat, setting foot on that island. And as soon as I did, I saw a horde of the inhabitants of the islands coming over and putting flowers around my neck. Perplexed, bewildered, surprised, I asked them what's going on, and they said that, look, our king has recently passed away a week ago. And the way that we choose our next king as part of our custom is by selecting the person that first comes into our island, who is a stranger, not from this island. So he thinks to himself, not a bad stroke of luck. So he says, very well, happy to be your king. And he says, come, let's show you your islands. So they were like, look, this is your lands, this is your houses. And he's like, wonderful. And they say, come, let us take you to your palace. He's like, I have a palace? Fine. And they take him to the throne room and show him the riches and the wealth and this room and that room. And he's elated, right? He's on a seventh sky already. And now he's sitting on his throne, for example, and they tell him that, oh, by the way, we also have another custom. So he's saying to himself, so far your customs have been quite good. Let's see what the other custom is. And they say, our custom is that whoever comes in has to marry the daughter of the previous king, and the previous king has left a daughter. So he thinks to himself, wonderful. I've now just become a huge king. I have this wealth and that wealth. I have this house and that house. And I have a huge palace with a throne room. Not only that, I also have a beautiful person to now marry. So he says, very well, when's the wedding? They said the wedding is tonight. He says, fine, I'm ready for it. So anyway, they get married, the nikah ceremony is done. Now he goes into the room and he's not seen the bride yet because the bride is in veil. So he goes into the room, makes small chit chat, and now finally wishes to see the face of his bride. Just as he was about to open the veil, he hears a loud knock at the door. And he says, out of all the time, what is it? He says that the Imam is here and he is calling for you. Right now. He says, yes, the Imam is here and he's calling for you right now. And he thinks to himself, 40 years I've waited for the Imam to come. The Imam couldn't find a better time but to come right now. And he says to the person, look, give me one night, I'll go and meet the Imam the day after. He's like, no, the Imam is here and he wants to see you now. He says, at least give me 5 minutes. He's like, no, the Imam wants to see you now. So he thinks to himself, he's like, let me just open that veil. And as soon as he does that, his eyes open. And he realizes what he missed out on. You see, the people that are going to be part of the 313 are going to be obedient to the nth degree. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq says as part of the characteristics, they're going to be more subservient, more than a maid servant. These are those people that if the Imam was to say, drop everything, come, they'd be like, labbaik ya Imam, without batting an eyelid. Right? If the Imam was to say, look, I want you here, they'll be like, labbaik ya Imam. Right? This is the level of the 313. And this is the answer that Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi got from this story. And it's a story for us. Not only was Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi remembering the Imam as part of his normal day life. After class, let's just talk about the Imam. Number one. Number two, not only did he get the answer of how obedient they are, but the third thing that we get from this lesson is how to be active when we wait for him. When, for example, we say, yeah, we're obedient to the Imam, the question that we can ask ourselves in this world is, would the Imam be happy if I was to do this action? Would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be happy with this? And so on and so forth. And so we get to a point where we've asked the most important question, are we ready for the Imam? We've tried to answer very briefly what things we can do to at least get to the stage of being actively ready. The third thing, as I had promised I'd like to mention today, is how practical tips to build a relationship with the Imam of our time. And I'm going to mention just one practical tip, and inshallah then we'll move on to one or two du'as, and then inshallah we'll finish it there. You see, one practical tip that we can do to make the Imam of our time part of our daily life, right? Every time we wake up, every time we sleep, one way to make the Imam part of our life, to live the Imam of our time in our life, is to remember him in every small act that we do. For example, when we have a sadaqah box, right? Every time we give sadaqah, all we have to do is, Ya Allah, I give this sadaqah for the safety of my Imam and for his, so that the thawab goes to the Imam of our time. Now, does Allah then divide your thawab and give it to the Imam? No, Allah is Kareem, you also get the thawab, but in the same way, Imagine this thing, if it's someone's birthday, we give a gift, no doubt we're going to get a return gift from them, or when it's our birthday, they'll gift us. Now imagine every day you're giving gift to the Imam by giving sadaqah on his behalf. Surely the Imam is going to know that today Zahir or Muhammad or Ali or Shabbir gave me a gift by giving sadaqah in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No doubt the gift that comes back from the Imam is going to be much greater. Now it's not the case that the Imam needs us to pray for his safety. Allah, who has kept him alive for all of these years, is protecting him. The Imam doesn't need our and your du'as to keep him alive and to keep him healthy. Allah is doing that. Nonetheless, our sadaqah, our gift that we give towards the Imam can be humble to a gift of a poor, needy person that gives a gift to a mighty king. For example, if a poor, needy person is to take a small amulet or a small kind of box of gift towards the king, not the king needs this gift, he's got all of the riches in the world, but the fact that the poor person has entered his courts giving him this gift, the king in his court will also see that person, and he will also give part of his attention to that person. Similarly, the Imam has everything that he needs, but when we give a gift on his behalf, the Imam knows that today Muhammad gave me a gift, today Ali gave me a gift. And what happens is that we try and make a conversation with the Imam, build a relationship with the Imam. For example, I have a very good friend, and one of the things that he would do is, as part of his dining table, he would keep one seat reserved for the Imam, right? That when the Imam was to come, then this seat is reserved for the Imam, and we will invite the Imam for dinner at our house. Now just imagine you wake up every morning, you have kids in your house, every time everyone asks, oh, can we sit here? They're like, no, this is the seat of the Imam. So this just inculcates how the Imam is part of our life. Or for example, I've recently come across this example, and if we were to take a frame, an empty frame, and put it in front of our living room or our landing or whatever, and underneath that frame we put a sadaqah box, and that empty frame reminds us that if when the Imam comes in his zuhur, we will take a picture of the Imam and put it in the frame, right? Many of us have pictures of the Ayatollah, the Muraj, our family members. Along with that, keep an empty frame, which reminds us that there is an Imam that is alive. There is an Imam that remembers me and I remember him. And with that frame, if there's a sadaqah box underneath it, every time I look at that frame, I remember of the Imam, I put a couple of pennies, a couple of pounds as a gift towards the Imam. And whilst doing that, in every small action, what we do is we try and make the Imam part of our lives. For example, any career choices that we make, any exams that we pass, we're like, you know what, the Imam, I am going to get an A star in my GCSEs and A levels, because when you make your reappearance public and you're looking for people to establish your government, I want you to recruit me as one of your employees, as one of your ashab and ansar, because the Imam wouldn't want people, like, of course the Imam will welcome everyone, but imagine those that are top of their career, have the A stars and A's and B's and whatever. That's why we're able to help the Imam. So, or every time I go to the gym, play badminton, play sports, I'm like, you know what, the Imam, I'm trying to keep myself active so that when you come, I'm able to support you through my physical activities. Or for example, if I'm a treasurer, or if I'm a doctor, or if I'm a whatever I am, I can dedicate my career that, oh Imam, I'm going to be the best I can be in my career, and I'm going to be the best I can be in whatever capacity I'm doing, so that when you come, the best of the best will be able to serve you. And I was extremely pleased to see a young sister from our own community venturing into politics. And one thing that we really need to understand is we as Shias need to venture out in all sorts of fields, whether it's journalism, whether it's politics, whether it's medicine, whether it's engineering, and so on and so forth. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant that young sister, I believe Shahnaz Zahra, grant her success in whatever she goes for. Just imagine if we were to do everything with the mindset that, look, when the Imam comes, there'll be so much misinformation. I'll become a journalist and top of my field, so that when he comes, I'll make his message viral. Or for example, I'll go into politics, I'll go into media, I'll go into communication, so that I'm able to engage with different members of the community to help the cause of the Imam. And so this is something that we really need to try and inculcate within ourselves and within our kids, that the Imam can be part of every portion of our life. We don't have to go out of our way necessarily. It can just be part of the small things that we do. Some, like we're eating something, we can just give a gift of that sadaqah to the Imam, and so on and so forth. Now, one way to remember the Imam of our time is, of course, to recite du'as and to remember him. For example, I know I'm going to touch upon a single dua. We have du'as such as dua nudba, dua ahad that I've previously cursory mentioned. Then there is dua faraj, dua hujjat. For example, if I was to just mention the benefits of dua hujjat. Dua hujjat is what? Allahumma kulli waliyyaka al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan. And like I've always said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our elders, bless our parents, bless our teachers to have inculcated this beautiful du'as as part of our programs every single day. Agha Tunahi, in his book Alif Baye Mahdaviyat, or it's been translated in English, ABCs of Mahdaviyat, his first opening statement is the merits of this dua, dua hujjah. And he mentions 90 benefits of reciting this dua. Over 3 pages just dedicated to the benefits of this dua. Such a short dua. Allahumma kulli walikal. Many of us recited after many of our namaz, many after the Jamaat programs. For some of the benefits that he mentions is, for example, the Imam will pray for you. Imagine if you pray for the Imam, no doubt the Imam returns the favor. We say, Ya Allah, keep the Imam safe. The Imam will be like, Ya Allah, he has prayed for me. Ya Allah, keep him safe. Another benefit, he says, the Ahlul Bayt will remember you in du'as. You will get thawab, not only for yourself, but all those that taught you and your parents that brought you up. And he mentioned thawab after thawab after thawab. 90 thawab. Agha Tunahi, he mentioned in his book, ABCs of Mahdaviyat. Or for example, there's an even smaller dua like that, which is what? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. Imam al-Sadiq, for example, has said that whoever recites this dua after Fajr or Dhuhr, or for example, whoever recites 100 times after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him abundant rewards. And we have in our narration that whoever recites this dua, these du'as, that Allah, for example, dua ahad, that Allah will raise him, even if he passes away, raise him so that he can be part of the ashab and the ansar of the Imam of our time. And inshallah, with this we conclude today's conversation titled Active Intidar towards the Imam of our time, Al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And as part of a summary, we discussed the more important question, are we ready for the Imam? Then we discussed what am I able to do to make sure I am ready for him. And finally, we discussed some of the practical ways that we're able to show our preparedness and our relationship with the Imam of our time. And given that although it is the month of Sha'ban and we've just celebrated the birth anniversary of the Imam of our time, I'd like to spend a few seconds at most remembering the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada, because it's mustahab to remember about Abdullah in all of our gatherings. The Imam of our time in Ziyarat Nahiya himself, he states what? But as I have been hindered by the course of time, and Allah's decree has prevented me. So as I was not able to help you, and as I was not able to fight those who fought you, and show hostility towards those who showed hostility towards you, I will therefore do what? I will lament you morning and evening, and I shall cry blood in place of tears out of the anguish that I feel for you. Allahu Akbar. This is the love that the Imam shows towards Abu Abdullah. Many people say, we have traditions that the Imam sees our reports. He knows exactly what we're doing in our lifetime. The Imam has many things to cry about. Karbala was enough for the Imam to cry about. Let us not increase in his anguish. Let us not increase in his tears. Allah la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimeen, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept whatever little that we had to offer. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be part of those that can call themselves that yes, we are performing an act known as active intidar. And finally, when the Imam is to come, we're able to join him in as part of his ashab and his Ansar. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا سن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن أجله فرجا وسهل الله تعالى مخرجا وزوه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ما صلي على محمد وآله. بسم الله الرحمن
اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن حسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وهينا حتى تسكنه وارزقا وتمتعه